Have you ever wondered what it would have been like to take a class from Mary Baker Eddy? I know I have. Hi, my name is Julie. I was born into the Christian Science church and religion, and after 40 years I went my own way. And I believe that by doing that, I found myself back to what I believe was Mrs. Eddy's original intent of her teachings. We actually can look at her original class notes. She shared them with her students when she began teaching in the 1870s, and there are copies. And there's a copy at the Library of Congress. There's also a copy in the Red Book. You can read that copy on the Christian Science Plainfield website also. And the Mother Church, the Mary Baker Eddy Library, printed a copy, one version, one of the students, Daniel Spofford's version, in the in her Light and Life book from the Mary Baker Eddy Library, in My True Light and Life, the Mary Baker Eddy collection, on page, it starts on page 213. It's the Daniel Spofford version. And one thing that strikes me is it's very different from the teachings of today. If you've taken class in Christian Science, you might know. I mean, looking at these, if you look at, you can, I'll link the Red Book on the Christian Science Plainfield website. And if you scroll down to The Science of Man, by which the sick are healed, you can do a search, or you can scroll down, I think. You can see how long these were. These eventually became recapitulation. So then she, in the manual, she says Christian Science class should be taught from recapitulation alone. So these were her questions and answers. This is how she originally did her class notes. And I would say it's like, I don't know, 10 pages, 8 by 10 at most, maybe 8. And if you look at the recapitulation chapter in Science and Health, you'll see it's not very long. It's different than my class. My class notes were about 50 pages, 8 by 10. And most of my class notes were discussions of the synonyms and of how to give treatments. We did not stay focused on recapitulation like it says in the Bible, in the manual, at all. And we did not, we had a very, very brief lesson on animal magnetism, which is in the manual. That's supposed to be the focus, a big focus of class. We did not. We had a short little thing on animal magnetism. But I really like, growing up in the church, in the religion, and reading the lesson every day and going to lectures and reading, living off of Sentinel and journal articles for much of my youth. There's a Christian Science Speak. It's a perspective of the Christian Scientist that I have found we inadvertently pick up. And it's kind of an echo chamber, and we're all echoing back to each other this perspective of Christian Science. And it's the human perspective of Christian Science. And I found that when I really wanted to dig in more deeply to Christian Science, because I was yearning. I was yearning for more. I couldn't stop searching. I couldn't stop studying. I couldn't stop, this search, this feeling of, I need to know the truth. I need to know more. And the language had become such, a shell, like a perspective, a view, that I couldn't break through the Christian Science speak, the Christian Science perspective, the Christian Science language, to get to the root of the teachings, anything, to get to the part of the teachings that are the most powerful, is when you understand it, when you can, I think, when you can, the way I've always been is, I've got to get down to the nitty gritty of things that I'm learning, whether it's, being an accountant and having to get down behind the scenes and figure out how everything works from the beginning, debits and credits, and how to build a balance sheet and an income statement and a cash flow statement from scratch, and from just transactions, and where do those transactions come from, and how do they get through, and it's like, I likened it to a mechanic who wants to take the entire car apart to understand how cars work, and then to put it back together to understand how it all comes together. And that was the feeling that has driven me my whole life. And it drove me in Christian Science, this to get down to just the bare bones of the pieces that you need to understand it, because it was very hard to do within that Christian Science speak that I had grown up with. Being a fourth generation Christian Scientist, it was just spoken. That's the way we spoke. And it didn't mean to me what it probably meant to her first students when she spoke the truth to them. And it was like, or when, all of the testimonies that she put in prose works and Science and Health, were people that read the Science and Health and were healed. They weren't the people, they didn't go to a practitioner and get healed. She didn't put those testimonies and healings in here. She put the ones where people actually read the book. And in reading the book, their minds were like, all of these course corrections were made for them. I had been believing in hellfire and damnation. There isn't hellfire and damnation. Boom, healing. I had been believing that the only option for any kind of healing was medication. Boom, healing. They were just like, when they read the book, it corrected their thoughts. But they didn't come to the book with this like generations of, this is what the book means. This is what Christian Science means. This is what you're supposed to believe. And this is what, you talk about in the foyer at church, and you hear in every Wednesday service, testimony meetings. It wasn't that. It was just really unadulterated. They sitting down with the books and just being like, holy moly, what the heck? And people would say, this is what I always thought was true, and now someone else is saying it. So now I'm hearing someone else say what I've been thinking. And I wanted that. I wanted to understand that at that level. And so to read Mrs. Eddy's words, something she wrote, she says she's a scribe under order, so something she scribed, but was different than what ended up in the final versions of Science and Health. Both the first edition Science and Health and other editions in the beginning, And then the Science of Man, which was her original class notes, they fit that bill for me of, okay, this is her, this is the truth. She knew the truth, but she started over time to format in a way that she found mortal mind wasn't ready for this blunt just to come out and say this. So she says she hid it and hid it and hid it until it was almost no longer recognizable. That's what she wrote to one of her friends. So I think one of the errors that was uncovered to me when I was doing self-examination, when I learned what self-examination was, is I was allowing, well, the error was that I had inadvertently allowed a Christian Science speak to become part of my life and what I said to others and what others said to me without really knowing what we were saying. And it's really simple. Like in the her class notes start out, what is God? It's simply, principle, wisdom, love, and truth. And she wasn't, at this point, she hadn't distinguished, she hadn't come to her to use capitalization, or maybe it had, but the class notes didn't have capitalization for everything that was divine and lowercase for everything that was mortal. So it's very just simply, I think that I found out that for me, the capitalization confused me. Because it meant to me something that I don't think it was supposed to mean. I got it confused. So she starts out simply, what is God? Principle, wisdom, love, truth. What is this principle? Life and intelligence. What is life intelligence? Soul. Then what is God? The soul of man in the universe. The soul of man in the universe. Okay. Next question. Is God man? No. They are perfectly distinct and yet united. Soul or God is not man, nor is that which we call soul in man, while they are ever united as substance and shadow. Soul the substance, man the shadow. This is how she originally explained like reflection, like the scientific statement of being. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. Here she's saying soul and shadow. Soul the substance, man the shadow. And then she says, then what is man? The idea of this principle. And soul is the principle and substance of this idea named man, because it is the life and intelligence of it. And you will please remember, as a leading point in science, that man has neither substance nor intelligence, that these belong to the soul, and that the soul reflects itself in man. Therefore, man is the reflex shadow of the soul, borrows all substance, intelligence, and life from the soul. Scientific statement of being here. Outside of, and she says, you are not man or woman. You are the soul, and those the shadows and ideas of you. You are the soul, and those, man and woman, are the shadows and ideas of you. This is what she taught her first student. This was like the blunt truth. This is how it works. This is what came to me. This is what I figured out. I'm just sharing it with you. This is before she realized she was teaching mortal mind. She was teaching the mesmerized piece of us, the piece of us that thought we were mortal. And the piece of us that thought we were mortal wasn't getting this and was like, oh, I'm soul as a mortal. I'm a mortal soul. No, we're not. No, soul isn't mortal. It's immortal. This was saying you are God in the terms of soul and God are synonyms, which they are. and that we are not man or woman. So what's the choice? Soul, your soul, which then implied your God, which, you know, even today, there's a large number of people on this planet that understand this. But they don't go around, they're not the ones going around saying, we are God. Because people wouldn't understand, no, the mortal body that you see here, that's not God. No, the real self, the self of me that you don't see, that is beyond form, beyond time, beyond space, this immortal, eternal, infinite self, that is really who you are. The mortal self is your reflections, your thoughts dancing around, but they don't have any substance to themselves. The mortal, the personality you is not God, no. The real you is, the personality you is a sham. I mean, it's something we've given reality to, we've given it an identity, and we call it us, a personality with like likes and dislikes, opinions, judgments, values, morals, all of that. But no, you are the soul. You and God are one, was a wonderful way of saying it. Jesus said, I and my Father are one. But this is the nuts and bolts, the stuff that you need to build a car, or to build your understanding. If you're one who's looking for those nuts and bolts, you need this, because you're not going to get it in the church and the religion. Like even the version that they published in the Mary Baker Library published, it does not have that sentence in there. It actually excludes that sentence. It stops at it stops at man is the reflex shadow of the soul and borrows all substance, intelligence, and life from the soul. It doesn't then include the next sentence, you are not man or woman, you are the soul. And those are the shadows and ideas of you. So you're not going to get the meat, the nuts and bolts within the church. They don't know it is one option, which most of them don't. 90% of them, 95, 98, 99% of them don't. And the ones that do think you're not ready for it yet. So you're not going to get it. The next question, what is matter, is, you know, she defined matter. If you look in recapitulation today and you search for what is matter, you'll notice it's not in recapitulation. The definition of matter is not as such in recapitulation, which is very interesting. That why she decided to take it out of recapitulation. And I think this sentence answers it. What is matter? It is not substance, if soul is substance. For soul and matter are not one. Then matter held as shadow is the idea of God, but matter held as substance is a belief, an error. She was saying matter isn't, it actually isn't anything. It's not my mouse. It's not, you know, my hand. It's not that. Matter is the way you see things. If you hold matter as shadow, then it's the idea of God. Or she later changed that to reflection or manifestation. But matter held as substance is a belief. But if you believe that matter is substance, then it's a belief. If you believe it's shadow or reflection, then it's the idea of God. So if you believe it's the thoughts and the ideas of us dancing around in consciousness, or mind, then that's the idea of God. That's your ideas. But if you believe it's substance, that's a whole other thing. Like if you believe that your body is substantial and is subject to disease and death and aging and heredity and all that stuff, that's a belief in error. But if you believe that your body is just what you're seeing is your current concept of yourself, other people's concept of yourself, the whole collective concept. I mean, it's an individual and collective reflection or shadow, because we are all one together. That's the really good stuff, and then the notes go on. But I think, you know, when you're ready for the deep stuff, the stuff that is going to make a difference in your life, then this is where I was led. And if you look at the people who have been in the church for, 70, 80 years, they're, fourth generation, fifth generation, who knows? Some are just second, third. It doesn't matter. You have to wonder, why didn't you ever get to a point where you wanted more? You wanted the meat? And I think it can be a lot of reasons. No one told us there was more. Well, that's a good reason. No one said there was more. I think of people when I had a short stint as a journalistic practitioner, and a little longer as as a non-journalistic practitioner. But people would call, and the expectation, they've been in Christian Science their whole lives, and they just call, and this is what's going on. Okay, I will pray. But they don't. And then they get off the phone, and then they go back to their lives. And they're expecting in the background that you're healing them. And so there's a lot of people that don't know. I would say a majority of the people that don't know that, first of all, healing comes as a result of a change in thought. Healing comes as a result of, I believe this, and now I don't anymore. Or just like, Mrs. Eddy could not have been more clear by placing in prose works and Science and Health only healings where they were healed from reading Science and Health. And it even starts out and says, these letters were from people who were healed by reading Science and Health. At least Prosework says. I'll look in really quickly and see it. I don't remember how footage starts out. Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't. Yes. Thousands of letters could be presented in testimony of the healing efficacy of Christian Science, and particularly concerning the vast number of people who have been reformed and healed through the perusal or study of this book. Yeah. She couldn't be more clear that these are the healings she chose to share. So they're the ones that they sat and studied the book and read it, and it was like popping to them. It was like, oh yeah. This is awesome. We're reading the book, and we've been reading it since we were, we've been read to. I mean, that's all we've known. And it's not popping to us. But so it takes more for us. It takes like a desire, like an asking God to show me. I want more. I want something. I want the meat and I want the bones, the nuts and bolts. Give me the nuts and bolts of this truth that I know is powerful, but I cannot see through the mesmerism of the Christian Science speak and the Christian Science perspective and the way I grow up and all the voices in my head from this person and this family member and that practitioner and this teacher and that lecturer, and I can't get it out of my head, and I want more. So a lot of people, really do believe that it's just a system of healing. It's an alternative healthcare system. And if you're not being healed, well, just keep calling until you're healed. And practitioners and teachers will keep taking your money if that's what you want. And then there's others that, there's a lot of people that just want to go to church. They just want to go. They have their friends there. They grew up there. If they didn't go there, they would feel so guilty. If they left the church, they would feel guilty. Some of them read their lesson. But most of them just I want to be called a Christian Scientist. And that what it takes is to go to church and maybe serve at the church. Who knows? It's just a very, surface level. Mrs. Eddy had those. Mrs. Eddy had those students in her day. There's an article. It's actually got the word fruit in it that's spelled Fruite. It's in Proseworks. Well-doing is the fruit of doing well. It's in Miscellaneous Writings, starts on page 253. And she knew. She knew there were Christian Scientists out there like that. And this article is kind of like, she's telling them, how much trouble you are and how much trouble you give me. But she was saying it in a very nice way. Can a mother tell her child 1/10 of the agonies that gave that child birth? Can that child conceive of the anguish until she herself becomes a mother? Should not the loving warning, the far-seeing wisdom, the gentle entreaty, the stern rebuke have been heeded in return for all that love which brooded tireless over their tender years? For all that love that hath fed them with truth, even the bread that cometh down from heaven as the mother bird tendeth her young in the rock-ribbed nest of the raven's callow brood? And what of the hope of that parent whose children rise up against her, when brother slays brother, and the strength of union grows weak with wickedness? The victim of mad ambition that saith, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours," goes on to learn that he must at last kill this evil in self in order to gain the kingdom of God. And here is where she lays it on him. Envy, the great red dragon of this hour, would obscure the light of science, take away a third part of the stars from the spiritual heavens, and cast them to the earth. This is not science. Per contra, it is the mortal mind sense, mental healing on a material basis, hurling its so-called healing at random, filling with hate its deluded victims, or resting in silly peace upon the laurels of headlong human will. What shall therefore the Lord of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the husbandmen, and will give the vineyard unto others. She had her share of dealing with what she called church scientists, or so-called Christian scientists, asleep without wine. She had them. She had many, many of them. She had thousands and thousands of them, and many of them were close to her. In fact, when she, at the end of her life, she knew she was dying, and she asked her secretary at the time, one of her secretaries, Eddy, to write a memoir of her and to make sure that it got printed, and to tell the field that she had been killed by mental malpractice. And she meant her own students, the people in the church. There were people in the church that felt like they knew more than she did. They wanted the manual changed so that they could continue church continue going without her signature. They thought that she wanted that. They thought she wanted church to continue on forever. And she said, no, it's not going to change without my signature. So it's not going to get bigger. It's not going to, and she knew that meant at some point they wouldn't be able to function or do anything. But they thought, oh, she's kooky. She doesn't know. She's losing it. She doesn't know. So, she wanted everyone to know that she'd been killed by mental malpractice, by these people within her own church that wanted her gone and wanted to, kill the heir. Kill the heir. That's what they wanted to do. And it's interesting. Eddy's book, he published it finally. His wife published it. And the mother church, and they gave it to their students. He was a teacher. And the mother church found out and made all the students return their copies. And basically, it was illegal. It was a battle, because they said, you should have written it. We would have put it in the archives. But we didn't want it to go out. Well, of course they didn't want it to go out. So they managed to take that memoir that Mary Baker told him to write with that specific tidbit in it, and they managed to hide it until 2013 when they stuck it in We Knew Mary Baker Eddy Volume 2, way in the back, under Adam Dickey. It's in there in the back with that. But that was 2013, I think, that they released that. Luckily, a couple of his students didn't return their copies, and so there has been copies around for people. I was able to get mine from somewhere. They're not allowed to sell it anymore. The mother church has threatened legal action to anyone who tries to sell it. And I don't know if you can get it in essays and prints in the Christian Science Plainfield website. I'm not sure. I think you can buy it online some places, and but it's now in We Knew Mary Baker Eddy Volume 2, way in the back under Adam Dickey. So yeah, she dealt with all the kinds of Christian Zionists, the ones that wanted to kill her. This is the heir, come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. It's just, and they had no idea what Mrs. Eddy had to go through to birth the science. to come to the point where you can speak the truth directly from divine love. It requires a complete surrender of self, and it is what Jesus went through when he agreed to die on the cross, which he knew was coming. It took him 3 attempts, if this, not my will, but thine be done, not my will, but thine be done, not my will, but thine be done. At the 3rd time, he gave up all sense of self and everything in him, that I'm a separate identity from soul. I'm a separate person that has to be protected, or I'm a body, or I'm a personality, or I'm Jesus, the Messiah, or whatever. He gave it all up. And that's why when he, died on the cross, he actually, was able to show up and show others that, no, he had it. I mean, because he hadn't. He had surrendered the personality, Jesus, the sense of self, far in the night before, or that morning, before the crucifixion. And that's what Mrs. Eddy had to go through. She had to give a complete surrender of self in order to hear the truth that would be what we have in the Science and Health and Prose works, and her other, her original writings. There's an article called Gethsemane, and you can get it. It was an article in the periodicals, and it was Lucy Hayes. I should just use my search key. The Way of Gethsemane. Yeah. The Way of Gethsemane by Lucy Hayes Reynolds. It was a journal article in April 1945. And man, this article blows me away. This was about the surrender of the immortal self. And this is what Christian Science is about. If you want the nuts and bolts of it, if you want the true selfhood of God to come forward as your true selfhood, as your true self, it requires a great surrender of self, and what the self, the human self, or the human ego wants. And the board of directors of Mrs. Eddy's time were the church people, the ones that were, let's kill the heir. They didn't have that. They didn't have that great surrender of self yet. And when you're looking around at people in the church, the ones that are the loudest, the ones that are telling everyone what they can and cannot do, and the louder they are, and the more opinionated they are, and the more strict they are, and the more teachers, a lot of teachers are this way. They are really stuck in self. You can tell that they don't have the nuts and bolts of it, because there is so much of them in what they say and in their teaching, so much of the human self, the human ego. And so it's just a good way for you to know they don't have the nuts and bolts yet. It may be coming, but this is going back to this, The Science of Man, by which the sick are healed, or Questions and Answers in Moral Science by Miss Mary B.G. Eddy. That's what she went BG in that time, what she went as. And then the original Science and Health, and just asking to be shown. That's what I needed as a lifelong Christian Zionist who wanted more. This is what helped me, and this is what it may help you.